All guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0, brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. European roots with that Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. Pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba for yourself. That's how you enjoy the NFL action starting tonight with Week 14. Go to your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie. Make sure you're always drinking responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Joining us here is our pal, Jamey Eisenberg, CBS Sports Fantasy Football, joins us every Thursday. Jamey, thanks as always for joining us. Before we get to the game, let's hit on a few hot button issues here. Big news today for the Dolphins. They extend right tackle Austin Jackson, 3-year deal. And, I mean, look, you know this Dolphin team very well, obviously. Feel like we've come a long way from calling Austin Jackson a bust, and now he's a foundation of this offensive line moving forward.
100%. You always like to see guys who get off to a little bit rocky start in their careers and, step it up at the right time. And, you hope it's not just a contract year situation, but clearly he's played fantastic. For those people that aren't aware, he's the actual blindside protector for Tua, because he's lefty. So that matters from a right tackle perspective. Not that the left tackle is not as important, but still, he's had a fantastic season, a big piece of this offense. And look, they can't have all this fun as well as Tyreek Hill plays and the running backs and, Jalen Waddle, Tua. They can't have all this fun if the offensive line is not keeping Tua protected and opening holes in the run game. So reward your players, stay in-house. You always like to see that. That's better than going out and bringing somebody else in unless you're getting a, superstar stud, but easier to do it this way. And, kudos to him and kudos to the Dolphins for locking him up early.
How about let's do a little bit of the MVP conversation. We're getting down to it, just 5 games left here in the season. It feels to me every other week it seems we're switching from, okay, is it Mahomes? All right, maybe it's Tua. Maybe it's CJ Stroud. Then it's Jalen Hurts. Now it could be Dak Prescott. So the fact that there's no real clear runaway winner at the quarterback position, do you think it actually opens up an opportunity for a guy like Tyreek Hill to win it?
100%. And we've talked about this a lot. How much will maybe Tyreek and Tua take away from each other because they go hand in hand. Tua's going to have a fantastic season. Well, Tyreek Hill's a big part of that. How is Tyreek Hill going to potentially get to 2,000 yards? Well, Tua's a big part of that. So they may negate each other a little bit, which is why you might see, Tyreek just win the Offensive Player of the Year award. But, Brock Purdy's put himself in the conversation. You also have Christian McCaffrey on the same team. I would not be surprised if there's a strong finish for Lamar Jackson if he, could potentially steal the award as well because of what the Ravens have done from a record standpoint. So it's definitely going to be a wide open race. It's not like the last couple of seasons where you kind of knew at this point who it was going to be. So whoever closes the season strong, and the Dolphins, the knock on them has been, can they beat a winning opponent? Well, they're going to get Baltimore. They're going to get Dallas. If Tua or Tyreek or both come out of those games with wins and big numbers, they may put themselves in a great spot to win that award.
Jamey, what do you make of the situation right now in New York? We know Zach Wilson isn't any good, but the part that's weird to me and is a really bad look for the head coach, a few weeks ago, Tim Boyle gave the Jets the best chance to win football games. Okay, fine. But now, Tim Boyle apparently isn't even good enough to be on the team, and Zach Wilson is back to being starter. What do you make of all that?
I mean, it is a bad look on Robert Saleh. It feels like he doesn't have a good pulse of what the team needs and maybe wants and what he wants to see because, look, their year got turned upside down a quarter into the season, when Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles. So, to try and maybe salvage something, they were trying to see, okay, if they get into the playoff race, does maybe Rodgers come back? And we know that was such a long shot. So, maybe at that point with the way Zach Wilson was struggling, he wanted to give his team a little bit of a boost and going to Tim Boyle, which really never made much sense because of what Tim Boyle was and was never going to be. So you just sort of should have let Zach Wilson finish out the season. And I thought the idea going into this was the reason they kept Zach Wilson as the backup was just in case learning from Aaron Rodgers and getting the idea to, get some tips and not have the stress of starting that maybe when Rodgers is done, that Wilson can get the opportunity to be the franchise guy. Well, that's obviously failed as well. So to not let him finish out the season, I thought was a mistake. And now they're sort of trying, to crawl themselves back into this. So you can understand Zach Wilson saying, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. What is this doing for me? from a career standpoint, it does seem a little wishy-washy that he wouldn't just jump at the opportunity to get back out there and play, because how many games may he start the rest of his career based on how things have gone. So at this point, it just looks bad all the way around. And you hope for the young man's sake that he can sort of salvage something that might be able to help him wherever he plays in the future.
All right, Jamey, let's start looking at tonight. Week 14 gets going. This is a brutal game. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. Yes, I understand the Steelers right now. They're a playoff team. The Steelers are number 5 in the AFC, while the Patriots are just the drizzling shits at 2-10. But these are two teams that can't score. What do we make of tonight?
Yeah, probably play the under. I think if you're going to go that route. It's an ugly one. You got backup quarterbacks, because Kenny Pickett is out, and that's a shame because I was hoping to see 2 games ago the offense looked much better. When they made the change of Matt Canada as the offense coordinator, firing him, and then last week they just couldn't do anything, and Pickett got hurt in that game. So you just wonder where they're at this point. From Mike Tomlin, based on how he's operated over the last couple of seasons, just trying to get the win, see if you get in the playoffs, and maybe your defense and your run game can help you out. But for tonight's game, it's really a lot of avoids. The Patriots are down their best player, so Ramondre Stevenson may miss the rest of the season with the ankle injury. I think you look at Ezekiel Elliott, and I know it seems strange to talk about him in 2023 as maybe somebody who could help win some fantasy leagues, but 6 of the last 7 games, a Patriots running back, 5 of those were Stevenson, 13 plus PPR points. That's a good place to be. So the Steelers' run defense is struggling. We saw last week James Conner, 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. I kind of like Elliott a little bit as a number 2 running back this week. I don't really love the Steelers running backs because they're going to take away from each other in a tough matchup. So really, it's if you can avoid almost everybody from this game, that's probably your best play, aside from the defenses, because they'll put up some points with some sacks and hopefully some turnovers.
Dolphins and Titans on Monday night. I'm very excited. I'm taking my son. Got him an early Hanukkah gift, all right? By the way, happy Hanukkah, of course, to the Eisenberg household. We got 8 crazy nights coming up here. So, Dolphins, Titans, what do we like on Monday Night Football?
Love that Hanukkah gift, and happy Hanukkah to you and your family as well. I think it's almost everybody for the Dolphins. So the Titans' run defense is missing a key piece with Jeffrey Simmons not there, but I don't know if he was there if they'd stopped Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. And I think at this point you got to put Achane a spot ahead or 2 of Mostert just with the upside. We saw that last week, even though a lot of it came in garbage time against Washington. But both are still worth starting. Can Jalen Waddle put up a big game? Well, the Titans secondary has been miserable most of the season, so you got to bank on him. And then obviously Tua and Tyreek are must-start plays. So it should be a fun day for the Dolphins. Should be a fun day for you to watch that game in person. They're nearly 2 touchdown favorites, and that sort of plays into the Titans because when the Titans lose and lose badly, understandably so, Derrick Henry is miserable. So Dolphins' run defense has been really good of late. Henry, again, whenever they've lost by 8 points or more, he's been awful. It's happened 3 times. I don't think he's gotten a combined 15 fantasy points in those 3 games. So you can maybe move away from Derrick Henry, which is tough in week 14. DeAndre Hopkins is going to see a lot of Jalen Ramsey, most likely, but even the other side is going to be difficult as well. So Hopkins is at best a number 3 receiver, and really those are only 2 guys for the Titans that you'd be considering.
That week 17 game for the Dolphins, Jamey, Dolphins at Ravens, that's going to be for first place in the AFC, right?
It feels like it. We'll see what happens with the Chiefs and obviously the Jaguars, but, losing Trevor Lawrence for however long he's going to be out puts a big damper on them, and they have to play Cleveland and Baltimore in back-to-back games. So even with Lawrence, it'd be a tough go. But obviously Baltimore, they got a tough schedule also. We'll see how they get through it. They've had a couple of surprise losses this season, so you never know how things go there. But if the Chiefs get their act together, you know what that team's like in December. So it's going to be fun. I do think that it definitely will have huge playoff implications, whether it's the 1 seed or not. You don't want to necessarily put yourself in a situation where you're playing a tough wild card opponent. So we know Buffalo's still going to be looming. We know clearly the Colts are playing well. The Texans are playing well. So the tough wild card games could still be on the table. You want to try to control your own destiny as much as you can. But yeah, if you get the 1 seed, that's going to be the thing you're searching for.
All right, Jamey. So, we pretty much know the best plays for each of the skill positions, but give me some sneaky good plays this week.
So a quarterback, I'm going to go back to Gardner Minshew. Remember, there's still 2 teams on a bye, so you don't have Kyler Murray, you don't have Sam Howell. Minshew had his best game since week 7 last week, over 20 fantasy points. And it's a pretty favorable matchup against the Bengals defense right now. They're struggling, so that kind of got lost in the game last week, just how bad Cincinnati's defense continues to be. So I like Gardner Minshew at quarterback. At running back, it was tough to find a lot of guys off the waiver wire this week because some of the injuries we were expecting, for example, Derrick Henry, he's going to play. DeAndre Swift, he's going to play. But we do have a couple of guys that were still available to you that you can go pick up and potentially start. The biggest one being Ezekiel Elliott in tonight's game. So if you did pick him up, if he has been on your bench, again, the Steelers' linebacking core is banged up. I like Zeke in this matchup tonight. Keaton Mitchell's another guy I'm kind of curious about for the Ravens. They gave him more work than Gus Edwards last time that they played 2 weeks ago. Rams' run defense is tough, but Mitchell has that explosive ability, so he might be a fun one in that game between the Rams and the Ravens. A lot of guys at wide receiver. Elijah Moore is probably my favorite streaming option this week, especially if Amari Cooper is out with the concussion and if Joe Flacco starts. He got 12 targets from Flacco last week. He's facing that Jacksonville defense, which has also been really bad lately. And so while he doesn't catch a lot of the targets that he gets, he's going to get a lot of them. And he's gotten 35 targets in his last 4 games. That's hard to overlook. Tight end, I'd go back to Isaiah Likely. Again, no Mark Andrews. Good matchup against the Rams. They've struggled against tight ends lately. And then a couple other sneaky plays at that position. You got Gerald Everett, who's done a nice job for Justin Herbert. The Broncos are miserable against tight ends. And then Tyler Conklin for the Jets, coming off a game with 9 targets. The Texans are really bad against tight ends as well.
Jamey, who are we keeping track of on the injury reports the next couple days? And what do we think is going to end up being the case with Trevor Lawrence?
I would be surprised if he played. They still have the opportunity to win the division. And so while this was going to be a tough game for them with Trevor Lawrence, why would you run him out there in Cleveland against that defense, which is so aggressive for Jim Schwartz at less than 100%? So let him get healthy for a week, try and beat Baltimore next week. But really, you got to just, at this point, win the division. The number 1 seed at this point, I think, is a pipe dream for them. But make sure Trevor Lawrence is healthy, because the last thing you want to do is miss him for the rest of the year. Christian Kirk is out for the next several weeks. Derek Carr is an interesting one, because if he's out, Jameis Winston comes in, and he's been very good for the wide receivers. We know that throughout the course of his history. 5,000-yard season in Tampa Bay, that was great for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. So Chris Olave would get a little bit even more of a boost if Jameis Winston starts. Again, Amari Cooper is one to keep an eye on there with his concussion situation. I'm trying to think of the running backs that we're looking at here. Henry should play. We'll find out his practice status today, Thursday, despite dealing with the head injury last week. And then I think that's it. We know the Patriots guys are out for tonight, so no Ramondre Stevenson and no DeMario Douglas.
Jamey, tell everybody how they can hear you and your pals leading up to tonight's game and, of course, all the action this weekend.
Yeah, CBS Sports HQ. It's our 24-hour streaming network. We're also on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. for Fantasy Football Today, and then our Fantasy Football Today podcast, which you can also watch on our YouTube page. We try to make sure you got your lineups right. It's playoff time starting next week, so let's make sure you get those wins.
Great job, Jamey. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Happy Hanukkah again to you and your family, man.
You as well. It's good to talk to you, and enjoy that game Monday night.